Hello, I'm Carrie Gorgon, and this is Appfire Presents, the best work management show by Appfire. Today, we're going to address the question, what are some current trends in productivity software? And to help us answer that question is Maciek Saganowski. He's head of product for Appfire's whiteboards.io and founder of the product and design festival, ProductCamp. So stick around for 10 minutes of exciting futuristic work management info.
Appfire Presents, the best work management show by Appfire.
Maciek, thanks so much for joining. So what are some current trends in productivity software? What can we look forward to?
Thanks, Carrie. Happy to be here. Oh, look, the trends. Before I maybe get into the very trends, let me just maybe draw a bigger picture here. So the context that we are inside of with our productivity tools is the bottom-up adoption of software in organizations. So the situation, like back in the day, you had salespeople who would come to an organization and sell software. These days, it's not like that, or it's not often like that. These days, teams and individuals inside various organizations, small and big, would adopt the software themselves, try it out, take it for a spin, and then kind of, like a virus, almost like, pass it to one another, and you build this network effect. So more people use the software, more useful it is for everyone. And that's how tools these days propagate within organizations. So you have tools like Canva, for example, or Notion that basically start out like that. So it's not like a sales rep will come to an org and say, oh, you get 10,000 seats. It doesn't work like that. It's usually one individual who will make this initial spark and ignite this software buzz or software craze in the organization. So
word of mouth, which means your product has to be really good.
Absolutely. So if it wasn't for great product and great UX, this situation, this snowball effect would not be happening, right? Because no one would want to use the software. So starting with the user, starting with UX, each person will need to want to use that tool, and the utility the software provides needs to be there. So utility, pleasurability, and great user experience, essentially.
Okay, so that's kind of the landscape in which we're operating. That's the big picture, if you will, which you could draw on a whiteboard.
That is correct. That is correct.
I work at Appfire. We have a couple app names I like to drop in from time to time. So what are we seeing? Like, what do people want now in productivity apps, and how is it different from what they used to want?
So you mentioned the whiteboard, so let's start with that. So historically, we had various software categories that have not really, this whole space was very stagnant for many, many years. So you would have your email software, right? That was single, purpose specific, send and receive emails. Another software, calendar, just check your meetings and set up your meetings. Another software, maybe Excel or a spreadsheet, right? Just tables. Another thing, Word or Sheets, or just write. But then we had another type of software that we would use when we would be with each other in a room, and that was a whiteboard, right?
And sticky notes.
And sticky notes. When COVID hit, we moved online, and all of those different categories that I just described were there, like email, spreadsheets, etc. But whiteboards wasn't there. So that was pretty much the very first new software category that emerged or really grew or started growing really rapidly after the remote work shift. And now every man and their dog pretty much is on a whiteboard. Every single large company has a whiteboard. They don't differ that much. They all support generic whiteboarding, but there are some specific whiteboards that are trying to be maybe purpose specific or trying to address a niche or a purpose of a specific user group. And this is whiteboards as such, whiteboards.io, which is our product.
Well, what I think is cool about whiteboards, and then I'll shut up about it, but I think it's cool that it integrates with Jira, with Confluence, with other things you're using to manage your projects, so that you don't have to finish your meeting and then go do a bunch of data entry, because nobody wants that. Which integration is another big trend, right? Because literally nobody wants to do that data entry.
Totally. Integration is probably the second biggest thing now, just after whiteboarding that I just described. And when we talk integrations, we mostly mean being able to use components or entities from different systems without leaving your current system. So for example, I am inside of whiteboards and I can work on Jira issues or Jira epics, not leaving that whiteboard. Or I can maybe, like you described, I can create a sticky note with an idea coming out of a brainstorm, or like I had a bunch of ideas, and then with a single click, I can push them to Jira and don't need to go to Jira at all. These, I can be sure that these items will land in Jira. So this integration thing is absolutely a big driver of where software is going these days.
Well, it saves time and it minimizes the risk of error, which I feel like is, pretty high when you're just entering a bunch of stuff, one thing after another.
Yeah, absolutely. And on this point, something that we also see is adoption of automation, or really automation as another trend. So these days, I can either use out-of-the-box automation workflows, or I can even create my own very simple automation. So for example, in my previous company, I would not use an applicant tracking system as such, but simply inside of, I could use just Trello and Zapier, which is like this fancy automation builder. And with Trello and Zapier and email, I could make an automation so that when I receive a new application, a Trello card would be created, and that's it. And I can just open up that Trello card with a CV. So yeah.
And then drag the card to the trash when you decide you don't want that person. No, just kidding.
No, obviously, we had some proper stages for candidates. But yeah, so moving a card to another stage would basically mean that this candidate would get an invitation to the meeting, or would be sent a note with a thank you.
You can build some pretty sophisticated automations, even if you can't code. Like we at Appfire have many apps that can do that, but there's tons of apps that make it stupid easy for people. So you don't have to feel as though you need to be a coding professional to automate things.
Yeah, that's very true. Another trend that I wanted to talk about is, and that's a fairly new thing, probably last 2-3 years, is the rise of super apps.
Ooh, super apps. Is that like supermodels?
Kind of like supermodels, or superheroes. So what that is an app that would try to be an app for multiple people and multiple categories and multiple roles. So again, historically, you had one app for a product manager, for example, another app for a project manager, another app for the HR person, another app for someone else. Now we're seeing tools like, for example, Monday or ClickUp that would try to embrace all those roles and really address their very different use cases, right? So that's another thing that we're seeing growing.
We've seen that, I feel like, in other industries, like in the, let's say, the graphic design space and the marketing space. Adobe has a whole suites of things that interoperate, and some really massive things. Do you see any disadvantages to that?
Yes, jack of all trades kind of syndrome, meaning, ultimately, if you want to be good at something, you need to specialize and need to brand yourself to that particular user group. So I guess maybe that's the major downside, that if there is a tool that is trying to address too many use cases, it ultimately will not be able to address all of them at the level that the user requires. So I think the jury is still out whether these tools will be able to fulfill the needs of the users and provide the great user experience. I don't know yet. So far, it's looking promising, but who knows?
Well, you can integrate apps too to do specific things, I suppose. Like if you have an HR group within your larger business group and they use a piece of this super app, then you can integrate a few apps that do specific things they need that nobody else needs. I mean, I suppose you could build it out quite a bit. I mean, we've seen that with Jira, with Confluence. It's what we do. So at Appfire, you can make it what you need it to be.
Yeah, pretty much. And speaking of Jira, for example, or Atlassian, we are also seeing, I guess, maybe certain similarities here, in that Jira would create these kind of add-on products or add-on use cases, for example, for product managers, or gather, create roadmaps. So you keep kind of mushrooming out these different use cases on top of each other. So software that's how companies grow, right? They try to sell more units, more seats to different users. And so that's inevitably that you need to do. Either grow your product by growing number of use cases, or create another product on the side and grow that.
Maciek, this is so interesting. I could talk for much longer about this, but the Work Management Show is only 10 minutes. So thank you so much for joining. And if you'd like to see more episodes, you can find those at hub.appfire.com. And be sure to check out whiteboards.io if you want to see some of what we were talking about today. So thank you, Maciek, and thanks everybody for stopping by. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.